The hangman represents the idea of seeing things from a different perspective and has an esoteric meaning of duality. Hello, I'm Michael J. Auger, creator of the Allcento Tarot, and today let's take a closer look at the 12th card of the Major Arcana. Both the words man and mind originate from the same Sanskrit word manas, which means to think. So this card could also be thought of as the suspended mind. The man hangs upside down, with his pure heart positioned above his head and brain, which suggests clearing our mind of thought in order to see things in a new and different light. If you view the tarot in repeating patterns of 10, this 12th triumph card is the second cycle of 2. Similar to the second card, the High Priestess, who acted as a gatekeeper between the seen material and the unseen spiritual, the hangman also allows us a peek behind the veil, past the illusions of duality. However, this time, we're granted vision by way of sacrifice. Psychologist Carl Jung explained that sacrifice means to make sacred, and this card is a progression into the higher, mystical experience. Jung described the collective unconscious as a world of water and wrote, "There I am the object of every subject, in complete reversal of my ordinary consciousness, where I am always the subject that has an object." The Visconti-Sforza version of this card depicts a man suspended from a wooden gallows by his left foot. Hanging a person from one foot was a punishment for traitors and also symbolism used in shame paintings. However, there's always two sides to every story. One person's traitor is another person's hero. The expression of this man is peaceful. He passively accepts his situation. This hints that it may be a transcending experience rather than a depiction of torture. Also, there's water below his head, which implies a connection with the currents of the collective unconscious. In many of the early Marseille-style depictions, there are 2 trees with 12 cut branches. Esotericists have interpreted this as a symbol of sacrifice, as well as a link to this being the 12th card in the Major Arcana. The fingers peeking from behind the man infer he has been bound in a very uncomfortable position. This appears to be depicting punishment, although it could also suggest a self-inflicted ordeal, similar to flogging or using binding cords in order to achieve an enlightened state. The man sticks out his tongue, and some have suggested this expression is mocking the viewer, as though he is taunting us, that he knows something that we don't. These suggestions are, of course, entirely speculative. However, they remain interesting possibilities nonetheless. The mysterious nature of this card has led to some misunderstandings and mistakes, though. In the 17th and 18th centuries, some card printers turned the hanged man right side up. As misguided as it may seem to us now, Antoine Court de Gébelin didn't see that as a mistake, claiming the card was not a man hanging, but a woman standing on one foot to represent the virtue of prudence. With apologies to Gébelin, this card is not about finding stability through the grace of prudence, but rather the experience of an unstable situation in order to gain the mystic wisdom of duality. The depiction of the hanged man in the so-called Charles VI deck includes bags of money. This could be interpreted as a thief caught stealing, or a traitor like Judas selling their soul. Or it could also be interpreted as giving away material possessions in order to progress on a spiritual path. There are different ways to see this card, and every choice is a sacrifice of another option. Occultist Eliphas Levi interpreted the triangular body and crossed legs as forming an alchemical glyph, which he said represented the completion of the great work of alchemy. And it said that through transmutation, perfection of the soul is accomplished. In the version of this card created by Oswald Wirth, we continue a Marseille-style depiction of a man hung between 2 trees, supported by a golden crossbeam that Wirth described as condensed light. The bark of these 2 trees change color from blue to green, which Wirth explains as indicating a progressive vitalization, aiming at freeing the moral and truly living side of religion from the practice of religious services. 12 branches of the 2 trees have been cut to reveal a warm purple sap representing active spirituality. However, 12 is an even and therefore passive number. We've progressed past active initiation and have entered a new passive state of surrender into the mystical. The man's bound arms hold bags from which coins fall freely. The gold coins represent wisdom and reason that he has striven to acquire, and the silver coins represent his affection and feelings of goodwill. He gives this freely with serenity and confident abandon. Although powerless in a physical sense, he has obtained incredible spiritual power and influence. This card has reminded many of the sacrifice of the Norse god Odin, who hung himself on the world tree Yggdrasil in order to obtain secret knowledge. A correspondence has also been made to the Greek goddess Artemis, who was hung annually in effigy. In both cases, death is not final, but instead represents a reversal of perspective, which leads to an enlightened rebirth. The hanged man willingly sacrifices ego in order to be granted the spiritual wisdom to see through the material illusions of duality. The version of this card created by Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Colman Smith makes a few big changes. In earlier versions of this card, the man crosses his legs so that his foot points left, suggesting we unconsciously stumble into the wisdom of the arcana. However, the Rider-Waite-Smith version has the man crossing his other leg so that his free foot points to the right. This implies a conscious-made quest. Also, instead of two trees with cut branches, there's only one living tree in the shape of a T, which Waite describes as a Tau cross. This has a correlation with the structure on which Jesus was sacrificed. Waite saw this card as having profound veiled significance. However, he believed it did not represent martyrdom or prudence, but a relationship between the divine and the universe. There's a prominent light surrounding the man's head, suggesting illumination of the mind. Initiates of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn were subjected to a ritual with symbolic execution in order to progress to higher grades. The esoteric meaning of the hanged man is the essence of the Golden Dawn's teachings, and their emblem of a yellow sun rising into a blue triangle surmounted by a red cross has the same shapes and colors as the hanged man card. The Golden Dawn linked this card to the zodiac sign of the two fishes, Pisces, as well as the planet Neptune, named after the Roman god of the sea, and the Hebrew letter Mem, which is attributed to water. Water was the first mirror, reflecting images upside down. Water is also used for cleansing, and the hanged man, being reborn with a new perspective, has a theme that is similar to a spiritual baptism. That being said, Aleister Crowley rejected all associations with guilt and sin. In the Thoth version of this card that he created with the help of Lady Frida Harris, there's no gallows, and the focus is not on sacrifice or suffering, but rather seeking a connection with the divine to learn one's true will or life purpose. The only sacrifice needed is the death of the ego. The man's eyes are closed, suggesting this is an inward journey. The hands of the man are nailed to green discs. These discs represent love, and the nails represent will. And together, they represent the two main axioms of Thelema. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, and love is the law, love under will. Now, this doesn't just mean that we should do whatever we want. It means that we should seek out our true purpose in life, and we'll be able to find it if we have love in our heart. Then, once we discover our true purpose, or will, we must do it. The hanged man represents this duality of importance between will and love. He's anchored in spirit by an ankh that pulls him out of the darkness into the light. A serpent that represents a force of creation and destruction is coiled around his left foot. And another serpent can be seen at the bottom of this card, stirring in the darkness of the abyss as a symbol of the effect of the work of God. In the background is a grid of elemental tablets depicting the wisdom of all nature. And here is a depiction of this card from the Allcento tarot. We return to the symbolism of the Marseille-style tradition with a man hung between two trees, with crossed branches in the shape of an X to represent duality. Similar to the version by Oswald Wirth, the trees change color from blue to green to gold and have a total of 12 cut branches, revealing a warm and purple sap. Coins of gold and silver fall from his tied money bags, which implies that in order to gain, we must give. Dark waters of the collective unconscious can be seen at both the bottom and the top of this card. Along the roots of the true trees are liberty cap mushrooms that provide another way to sacrifice the ego and open the mind. Echoing the theme of the high priestess, who shares secrets with those she deems worthy, so too the hanged man proves he is worthy of secret knowledge by facing an ordeal in the material world to gain spiritual insight. He has surrendered to his higher self and has been granted illumination. There's a glow around his head, and his hair is extended in a pattern of straight and wavy strands similar to the sun. The hangman signifies a willing sacrifice that is essential to achieving duality of perspective and perception of a higher truth. And this brings us to the end of this episode, which I hope you found enlightening. Leave a comment to let me know what resonated the most, and please give a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you so much for your support. And as always, you can find out more about me and the Allcento Tarot at my website, offbeatartwork.com. And until next time, bright blessings on your spiritual journey.